Start out. Our Vice Chairman is hung up in traffic. He'll be with us in a few minutes. I'm going to call on Commissioner Paul Johnson for approval of our minutes, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I reviewed the minutes and approved them and move for approval.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, next is the Rutherford County Industrial Development Board presentation. Sorry about that, Tab. We'll get you right up next. Welcome, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chairman P. and Budget Committee members. I'm Bill Jones. I'm here today representing the Industrial Development Board. And what I'm here tonight is to update you on the status of the one of the pilot arrangements with Nissan. Just a brief history lesson, that the first pilot agreement with Nissan was put in place 40 years ago. When the plant opened, it was a 20-year deal. It was at the end of those 20 years, a second agreement was put into place to carry another 20 years, and those 20 years expired in February the 15th of 2022. So that is the history of the pilot agreement. So that pilot agreement has now expired and is no longer in effect. History also is that the County Commission has looked at these pilot agreements and approved them in the past, even though in some cases they're within the authority that you have given the Industrial Board to approve without coming to the County Commission. It is obviously, I assume, the largest economic development deal that'll ever occur in this county, or at least during my lifetime. It's significant enough that even though it would be within our authority, we've always come back to the Commission just to update you and give you a chance to have your say as well. So what I'm here tonight to do is to talk with you about the idea of a new pilot agreement for Nissan. Again, the agreement they have has expired. And our focus, being the IDB's focus, is to look for ways to incentivize Nissan to make future investments in the plant for modernization, those type things, so that hopefully they're here producing vehicles 40 years from now as well. I think what you got to remember is when Nissan corporate, big Nissan, decides where they might produce a vehicle, I think they've got 6 worldwide plants, maybe 3 in Japan and 3 outside of Japan, where they produce vehicles. And obviously, as good business people, they look for the most efficient place to produce whatever vehicle it is they're working on at the time. And we're fortunate that the Smyrna plant now produces, I believe it's 5 different vehicle lines, 640,000 vehicles a year, some 7,000 employees directly employed down there. So we the Industrial Development Board, are interested in them being incentivized to continue to make investments to keep this plant at the cutting edge, because Nissan is going to produce vehicles where they can do it most efficiently and most cost effectively. So we need that to be the Smyrna assembly plant, if at all possible. So with that being said, we have met with Nissan several times and have worked with them and have, I think, something they would accept and that the Industrial Development Board, I believe, would accept. And the outline of the deal is basically this. What they have now on the pilot, which is expired, is back on the tax rolls now. They will pay the tax that it's due to pay. So I believe our calculations are that Rutherford County will collect an additional $1 to $1.2 million a year because that pilot has expired. So there's additional revenue there. Nissan understands we're not renewing that. They've been very good to work with. They understand that, and they just want to look for a way to help them going forward. So what we have discussed with them is a new pilot that would last for 20 years, but it would incentivize them only on new investments in the plant. In other words, if they don't make any new investments at the Smyrna plant, they wouldn't get any incentive. We believe if we incentivize them to spend money there on that plant, that's the best way to keep that plant functioning and in a position to compete within Nissan to produce vehicles. And again, everybody knows there's a lot going on in the automotive industry. Lots going to change over the next 20 years, and we want to make sure the best we can that we help and incentivize Nissan to keep this plant going here. So again, we're talking about an incentive only on new investment at the plant. What's there now that's subject to this pilot, is fully on the tax roll, will pay their full share of taxes. And what we would ask is that, what we propose is that on that new investment that they would pay half of the tax that would normally be assessed against those taxes. Again, just on the new investments. Again, we think this would encourage Nissan to spend money on the Smyrna plant. It will protect those 7,000 jobs and all the other jobs in the associated industries that support the manufacturing plant down there. We think it'll help attract new vehicle production to Smyrna. Last week or a couple weeks ago, Smyrna awarded 2 new vehicle production assembly jobs to their Mississippi plant. That's okay right now because we've got 5 lines we're producing here, but we don't need to have the Smyrna plant fall behind in relationship to the other Nissan plants. So again, we want those jobs to be in Smyrna, those future jobs. We want those jobs to continue to be Rutherford County jobs. And again, we would propose a 20-year pilot agreement. And again, I know I've said this several times, but I think it's so much different than what we've done in the past. The incentive would only be on new production. Don't make any new investments, they don't get any incentive. So that is significantly different. Now, I'm not in position to tell you what Nissan will do or how much money they might spend. I do think in doing our research and discussions, I mean, you're talking about over 20 years to fully revamp the plant to produce electric vehicles and those type of things. You're talking about an investment that could be $3 to $5 billion. Again, I don't represent Nissan. I can't tell you what they'll do. I'm just telling you to fully go through the plant, you could be talking about that kind of money, which is obviously a significant investment in the county. If they were to do that, we project that that investment would produce tax revenue that gets collected in Rutherford County of $600 million over those 20 years, $600 million collected. If they fully took advantage of the pilot, the taxes that would be abated over those 20 years would be of roughly $115 million. So $115 million is a lot of money. $600 million is 5 times that. And just to remind you, Commission has told the Industrial Development Board that our kind of bogey is to get at least $3 in taxes collected for every tax dollar abated. This would exceed that deal and be, frankly, a little over 5 to 1. So we think that is a reasonable opportunity to encourage them to do that. So in summary, the existing Nissan pilot, the original pilot has expired. It's not being extended. Nissan knows and understands that. And that property will pay its full share of taxes starting in 2022, again, bringing in $1 million or $1.2 million in additional revenue to the county. We would ask that you all consider our negotiation with them to incentivize them on this new deal for future investments at 50% of the tax that would be due. Again, we want to protect those jobs, protect that production in Smyrna. Clearly, it would be impossible for me to estimate the economic value and impact of Nissan being in Rutherford County for the last 40 years. We want to incentivize them to make investments so that they're here another 40 years, and we think this is a fair proposal to them. We believe that they would agree to that, and a fair deal for the citizens of Rutherford County if, in fact, we can produce $600 million of revenue and only give up 100 in round numbers. So again, I remind you that this is within the Industrial Development Board's purview to take, being that the return is in excess of 3 to 1 at 5 to 1. But historically, we have brought the Nissan deal to the County Commission, even though we didn't necessarily have to, and because of the economic impact and those type things. So, Chairman, I would ask for the Budget Committee's endorsement of what we have negotiated and to recommend us bringing this back to the full commission next week to tell them the same story and ask for their approval as well. Assuming if we were to be fortunate enough to get that done, then the Industrial Development Board meets the last Wednesday of this month, and the Industrial Development Board would take it up for approval at that point. So again, I ask that you endorse it and also recommend it going on to full commission for the agenda next week.
I'd
I'm sorry.
like to ask our committee if any of them have specific questions about this. If you do, go ahead, Commissioner Allen.
I know you said that you don't have specific numbers, so that the approximation of the 600 million and the 100 million, that's your best guess.
That's if we assume, again, trying to make sure I've calculated the highest amount of the incentive, we assumed a $5 billion investment. Again, Nissan would fall off their chair if they think I'm announcing something like that. So I'm telling you, I'm not doing that. I'm telling you, we believe that it could take as much as that much money over 5 years. If that was the case, if $5 billion was spent, we calculate, or not we, it's our consulting firm that calculates economic impact. They would project $600 million in taxes collected and $115 million in taxes abated.
And then I know you said this only happens to incentivize them for their investments, correct?
For future investment.
Right,
future investment.
Future,
yes, ma'am.
So what's the monitoring process? Like, how do we go about confirming what they've done and how we're getting that 3-to-1? And if we're not getting the 3-to-1, how does that
Yeah, well,
work?
again, we're aiming for 5-to-1. The way the process works, and Industrial Development Board Attorney, Mr. Bolden's back here, but we have to, they have to provide us a bill of sale, and I can provide the county a bill of sale each year so that the assessor's office knows that there's more personal property there. That goes on the tax roll and it gets taxed. So just in their process of doing what they're supposed to do, we would see that they spent, whatever, $200 million this year, and we would know it was there, and we would know to incentivize them for half of the tax just on that new personal property investment. So there is but that's the same thing we do with all the other deals that has a personal property abatement involved. We go through the same process. And the assessor's office is, that's the normal process. They're used to doing that. Thank you. Good question.
Mayor Kitchen.
So, Mr. Jones, so what we do know is that Nissan has come to us, and they've had this first pilot that's been there since day one, and that is coming to an end. It actually ran out in February of this year.
Yes.
It has ended. So what we do know is we're going to be receiving $1.5 million, $2 million, whatever it may be.
We calculate, and again, we may be wrong because it depends on exactly how the plant's valued and personal property. We think it's at least $1.2 million.
Okay,
It could and it could be more than that. But
Okay, so at least we know we're going to be getting this year $1.2 million by this first pilot ending.
Right.
And then as we move forward, we'll still continue over the next number of years with this new second pilot for equipment going to be put on the inside of that building. And so they'll still continue paying from this point forward, now that pilot's gone, on the exterior of the plant. So those will be recurring dollars that will still continue to come into us, correct?
Correct. Again, and if nothing happens, they're on the tax roll just like any other piece of property would
Right.
be.
Yes.
And that's going to be the case going forward, or unless something changes it. But that deal is done.
Yes.
And the new deal would be only on new investment going forward.
Yes,
But
sir.
what goes off the tax roll now stays off the tax. I mean, what comes on the tax roll this year stays on the tax roll.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the committee? I've had an opportunity to speak to these gentlemen myself, and my father, when he was commissioner a long time ago, actually voted for the first 20-year agreement. And then several of us sitting here, I know Paul and Trey myself. I think we all voted on the second group. And this is actually a third chance. But what I like about it is this one does not change the fact that they'll be paying full price, or rather they'll be paying full taxes on the building and contents that's there. You know, this basically, the only abatement they'll get is if they make improvements, and it's kind of an incentive to them to make improvements and keep these jobs here for us. Unless I don't understand something correctly, straighten me out.
Oh, sir, that's it. And just to be 100% clear, of all that property down there, there's lots of buildings. We've got 2 other pilots, one for the battery plant, one for a logistics building. But this would be what most people think of as the Nissan plant. It's the vast majority of the 800 acres. It would be 6 million square feet of it, you know. So yes, that is the case. And again, we believe, we hope they spend a whole bunch of money down there at that plant. I think that's what we want them to do. And again, I think they believe that if we can provide this incentive, that gives them the ability to go to Nissan corporate, ask for money to spend here, and therefore keep producing vehicles here. So I think they're comfortable that even though it's less than they've been receiving, that they think that, you know, this gives them the advantage they need to try to keep producing cars here.
Mr. Johnson.
I know it's kind of like, you say, well, how high is up? But all your projections are very conservative, and you've done a lot of good homework on it. And I would move that we approve your request and send it on to the full commission.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Commissioner Allen. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman P.
Okay. Next up, we're back to our regular business. We'll call on Mr. Beatty for our investment report. Thank you for your patience here, Ted.
We have doubled our LGIP rate to 8 basis points, but that is going to move, and we're still at 15 basis points on our banking agreement. And again, those will fluctuate with investments, and as the Fed Open Market Committee changes rates, our bank rate will change directly with that rate, which we anticipate this month.
Move for approval.
I have a motion to approve the report and a second. Any further questions for Mr. Beatty? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next is our fund condition report. We'll call on our finance director.
Okay, I'll start with the adequate facilities tax. In February, in total, we received $462,915 compared to prior year, this February of 2021, $498,750. Our year-to-date is about 27% less than last year at this time, with it year-to-date being $3,092,903 compared to the prior year of $4,257,750. Cash at the end of February totaled $530,862,000, with $481,934,000 being operating funds and $48,927,000 being borrowed funds. Not any questions, I'll move to the review of revenue. Thing up. Still, all my boxes are green on both pages as far as the revenue, where we are in the year compared to the 5 previous years. The concern still is that I don't believe we're going to meet the estimate from the prisoner board. I don't know what happened, but last month I told you they were behind. We've received revenue for the boarding of prisoners all the way through January for the jail and through December for the workhouse. So that's good, but even still, with those monies coming in, I still project like a $1.6 million short right there. On the good news, sales tax countywide, 7 months into, 7 months reporting, we are almost 19% more than we were for the same 7 months last year. Hotel motel tax with 6 months is up 49%. At the end of February, at the bottom of the first page of that revenue review, is the collection by the trustee's office of the current property tax. He collected 89.3%, almost 89.4%. Don't compare that to February of last year because there was a large payment that didn't come until March. That typically was there in all the previous years. So I would suggest you compare to every year except last year as to say, where are we typically. Don't have any other particular things that I wanted to bring to your attention in any other funds. Entertain any questions.
Commissioner?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve her report. Here a second. And a second. Any further questions for Finance Director?
I have one question. I'm sorry. What's the refund from the jail medical from 2021? What is that?
Okay, so with the agreement with Dr. Rudd, we pay $1.4 million every year, for outside cost. That's where they take the medical folks outside the walls. Okay, so if there is a savings and that we don't spend it to that cap, we share in the savings. So that was money coming back.
Any further questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay. Next is our risk management financial report. Call on Ed. Okay, Mr. Ely.
Hey, Commissioners. So in the 264 fund for the month of February, revenue was $7,877,058 compared to expenses at $6,819,850. For a calendar year to date is revenue $15,763,543. Expenses are $14,098,167, and you have a difference of $1,665,376. The fiscal year revenue is $52,942,078. Expenses, $57,583,074, and your revenue less expenses is $4,640,996. The 266 fund for the workers' comp month of February, you will see it's $2,557.83. OJI, $8,962.74 for a total of $11,520.57. Year to date for 21-22 is workers' comp, $45,351.99. OJI, $292,443.38. for a total of $337,795.37. The county attorney expenses for the month of February, $37,244.37. And that concludes my financial report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any further questions, Commissioner Piercy?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second, 2 seconds. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens? Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd? Yes. Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you continue, Ed, I'm
All
sorry.
right, on the next item, we have the Medicare. The Insurance Committee made a motion and recommendation to send to the Budget Committee to move from the Rutherford County Post-65 plan to a Medicare Advantage Plus plan with Cigna. The motion that they made was to move to the Post-65 retirees to the Cigna Medicare Advantage Plan, PPO, Custom, Medical, and RX. And for the, there was a little question about chiropractic. So it was the chiropractic benefits to mirror Rutherford County's benefits that we have now, and with the existing contributions to the rates that the county contributes at this moment to the Post-65 plan.
I know a lot of us have been following that. Commissioner Allen, I know you're on that committee.
I don't know if you've been getting any phone calls about this, Ed, since we made this decision, but I've gotten quite a few from retirees wanting us to keep the other option or let it be a phase-in. Everything that we saw, everything that they presented, and we looked at this multiple times, just felt like it was a no-brainer. And so I don't know if people are just afraid of change. I'm not clear on exactly what the issue is, where the resistance lies. So have you been hearing from anybody? And this is kind of a follow-up to that. I know the Board of Education, they're going to make their own independent decision about whether they're going to go to the state or not. Can they make their own independent decision about this as well? I just don't know.
Their retirees, yes, they can. It's my understanding.
Because I know at one point, Commissioner Phillips made the suggestion that we do a phase-in, let them, I guess, basically run 2 parallel plans so that we can work the kinks out. The people who want to go to it, let them go to it. The ones that don't. We didn't pass that in Insurance Committee, but I'm sharing the feedback that I've gotten since that meeting. And so I'm just curious, have you been hearing from anybody as well?
We've had some feedback. Most of it is this has been to the Insurance Committee, I think, 3 times. A lot of questions have been asked. There's been several different presentations that we've had about this. In doing the comparisons, you know, the Cigna plan is going to mirror the plan that we have now. And if you looked at the slides that was presented, you see that there's a fairly large savings to go in and to do a full replacement for the post-65 plan. Option, you know, they're estimating maybe 30%. You know, there's 2 sides to it, but the one thing that you look at is if you do it optional, then you have 2 separate pools, your rates, you know, if you combine each set and you just have one do full replacement, then you have all of them in one place. And you know.
The only recurring objection that I heard was people were concerned that their physicians are not in the network. But Paul Huffman very clearly said to us that they pay the same whether a physician is in network or out of network. And so my question to him was, then why would, as a physician, why would I choose to sign the contract if the reimbursement's the same? And his response was, it's generally ease of administration, which in my mind, that just means there may be some additional work on the patient to get that claim reimbursed. So I don't know what that looks like. And again, I don't know if that's the fear, but that's a big part of what I'm hearing. People are saying, we like it, we're used to it. We don't want to change. We don't want to lose our doctors, that kind of thing. So I just want us to take a moment and pause and have this conversation again before we just vote and move on, because it did feel like a no-brainer to us. We kept looking for the holes in it. We kept looking for all the reasons. There was some reason not to vote for it. It just felt too good to be true. And the closer we examined it, we couldn't find a flaw. We just couldn't find a flaw. So I'm just curious if you have any guidance or thoughts.
I've had calls about questions, but once I think it's explained, he explains the difference in the rates. I think, Paul's in the crowd, and you'd like to bring him forward and, talk about it. But yes, anytime you move to something, not all doctors are going to be in that plan 100%. If you went from Cigna to Blue Cross, you go to the local network, it's a smaller network also. And there will be some that will say, I'm not going to do it. There'll be, what that percentage is, I don't know. But the large majority that take Medicare now, it's just, instead of submitting to them, it'd be submitting to Cigna. Come on up, if the committee doesn't mind, do you mind?
No, that's fine. We'll bring him in as part of your report. Unless I hear an objection from my members here.
Thank you, Chairman. That's correct. This question has come up a lot because the Medicare retirees really have three questions. What's it going to cost me? What are the benefits? Are they going to cover the same benefits and drugs that we have today? Yes. And number three, what is the network like? Am I going to be able to go to the same pharmacies, and am I going to be able to go to the same doctors and hospitals? And the answer is yes on those as well. Because we have developed a group Medicare Advantage plan. It's different than what you get in the market for individuals. We pay the same benefit whether they're in network or out of network. But we want doctors to contract with us for three reasons. I mentioned one is ease of administration. Doctors can get paid electronically from us real quick. If they contract with us, they'll be in our provider directory, so people will see them and go to them, have their address. And number three, we share data with doctors that are contracted with us. So we're sharing information about patients to help them care for those chronic illnesses. Doctors who do not want to contract with us might think that someone who goes out of network has to pay more to see them. They might think that because that's what they're used to, but that's not true. Cigna will pay the out-of-network provider the exact same 100% benefit Medicare reimbursement that they would get if they were in network. So that's the thing we're having to educate and communicate to the individuals. The one thing we don't have control over is if a physician, a doctor still says, well, I don't believe you, I don't care, I still don't want to see you. I don't accept Medicare. I just don't want to change where I send my bills. I want to send them to Medicare, I don't want to send them to Cigna. We can't stop them from doing that. There's probably a handful that will do that, but we still feel that through education and communication we can address that and resolve a lot of issues.
Mr. Allen.
My only follow-up on that, Paul, on that ease of administration piece is, do you imagine that there might be a time if my out-of-network physician is going to expect me to pay and then file the claim for reimbursement? I could really see that being a huge pushback for insurance.
Yes, that could definitely be a possibility. So someone who is not contracted with us that still is willing to let you come into their office, they perform the care, but there is a chance that they could ask for payment up front, but they're going to be willing to submit the claim to Cigna. If they don't, then the member can easily file a reimbursement and get all that back. Okay, so that could be a small hassle, like you said, that could pop up for those doctors that might not be willing to contract with us. But again, they're still getting 100% of what they were getting before. Good question.
Are there any other questions from the committee at this time? Commissioner Piercy.
Will the people still be able to visit the clinics that they're visiting now, or will they have to change and go to a different spot? I know I've had some calls. There's one in Walter Hill, and there's several out our way that frequent that one, and they didn't want to have to go further.
Correct. If the clinics still exist, then yes, they will still be able to go to them. No change.
Commissioner Allen, and your question was, or did I misunderstand you? Were you saying you'd rather not vote on this tonight? You want more input, or?
No, I just wanted to hear if Ed was getting phone calls, if anybody else was, because I'm getting them, and I just want us to pause before we voted. I'm fine if we want to go with the recommendation from the insurance committee. I just want to make sure that we, once again, because again, it just feels like the right decision. It feels like the right thing to do. I just want to make sure that anybody that's watching this who has concerns is hearing this information again.
I appreciate that. I've been getting calls too, and he basically addressed everything that I've had a call on. Anyone else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Since I've been on the insurance committee and have heard this multiple times, I will fall on the sword and say I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Mr. Dodd, seconds. Mr. Johnson.
I just have one question. Since I'm a retired employee of the county, do I need to declare Rule 10 on this vote?
I would be safe.
I would.
I said I would to be safe.
Okay, I'm going to declare Rule 10 then.
And I shall also declare Rule 10. I recently changed over about a week ago, wasn't it, Mr. Elam?
Sir?
Okay, any further discussion? Not call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Elam. Next up is the Emergency Management Performance Grant. Chris? Like I've seen you before today.
Been a great day,
It's been.
Chairman, Mayor, Committee.
What he's speaking of, we had groundbreaking out at Kittrell and also Ambleboy area for the new public safety buildings. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And it was a beautiful day to do it. We are requesting an emergency management to request permission to accept the funding for emergency management performance grant, which is a 50-50 grant. This is kind of an annual grant that we get supplemented for our payroll. We currently have that fund in our budget. This will just supplement it.
Did see this at Public Safety, and it passed unanimously.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve grant. And a second, Commissioner Gooch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
The second grant is the same, requesting permission to accept funding for this grant, which is a hazardous material emergency preparedness grant. It's a 80-20. We are hopes to fund our portion, the 20%, in next year's fiscal year. And then we'll speed up that training that this is going to go to so we can complete it July, somewhere in August. We'll try to put that $3,700 into next year's fiscal year.
Actually, Chris, this is an amendment to the current grant we have, and it expires 6/30 of '22. So this is actually just an additional. I think what they did when I looked at it, the original grant that they sent us was calculated incorrectly, and so this is just a correction of the original grant we approved
Correct.
a few months ago.
They
Yes.
added on to the original grant.
Yes.
They tacked on this year's grant.
Yes, it is. This is an amendment to the original
correct.
grant we approved a few months ago.
Correct.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion on this.
Motion to approve.
Motion? Second, Commissioner Allen. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Next is the Convenience Center improvements and related solid waste fund budget amendments. And we'll call on Mayor Ketchum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For those that are on Public Works Committee, night before last, Mr. Bishop came before us and told us of the state of some of our, we have, as you know, we have 14 convenience centers. Unfortunately, several of Mr. Bishop's drivers all came down with COVID, which left us with 4 drivers to pull trash, open containers from 14 different locations, which set us behind. As of last Tuesday, night before last, Mr. Bishop stated that he had 111 trash containers sitting on the ground and could not be pulled. And keeping in mind that Republic is closed on Sundays, where we're open on Sundays, so it got to the point to where he had to close some of them and was rotating them. And he came to us Tuesday night and asked that we close all of our convenience centers for a period of 4 days where he could catch up. They, I don't think anybody that night wanted to do it, but felt compelled that we had to. Well, I slept on it overnight, and I came back and I was going, this is just wrong. We'll get more pushback from your wife telling you to take the trash to the convenience center and it's padlocked than what we get on a daily basis from the landfill. And our chairman was one of them who took his trash, and it was, the chain was across the convenience center. So I called Mr. Bishop and asked him to reach out to Republic. Republic has made a proposal to us, and it came in late this afternoon. That's why what we're discussing with you. Now, what I'm talking about, and I'm going to come back to item number 9, but if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, we'll go ahead and handle both of them at the same time, okay? Because they're all kind of related.
I don't hear any objection from our committee. Please continue.
Okay, so what we have concluded with Republic, they have passed along to me a temporary service agreement that they would charge us $77.70, so provide us with 1 truck and 1 man, and we will take, Mr. Wagner will take all of our convenience centers, pick up those bins, bring them out to our location at our landfill, drop them, go back and continue to bring them back to our landfill. They, in turn, Republic will come to our landfill, pick them up. That way we're not having to pay Republic to go all the way to Fosterville, Christiana, all the way to Laverne, et cetera. So they have a short distance to pick up those bins, 111 of them, over the next however long it takes, and drive it around, and they will get a, like Disney World, a fast pass, past the 2-hour line that's going from all the other trucks that are coming in. They'll be able to go to the front of the line, dump, go back, and pick up another one. So that guy will be dedicated to us, and so we figured, I think, Bishop, you figured not to exceed $30,000. Is that correct? We think that
Yes,
should
Mayor.
get us back on track. He's got 1 guy that's been out with surgery. He will come back to work on staff as driver on Monday, and you just hired another one, I believe, this week. So that should fully staff you, and by the time that all these guys go through that process, we'll get hopefully caught up, but not to exceed $30,000. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what I'm looking for tonight, is authorization from this committee. We don't have time to wait to take it to the full commission. This is an emergency, if we could. Request, you just give me permission to sign the service agreement to Republic and let Mr. Wagner go ahead and call Republic and tell them to get on it first thing in the morning. But if everybody's watching, we are going to keep all of our convenience centers open. You can do that with this process.
Yes, in fact, the rolling closure schedule that is currently available, I plan on eliminating that and going back to full service beginning Tuesday morning. Should this approve and we're able to sign this contract, the Republic service employee that will be assisting us will begin Monday morning, which is a normal closure day for operations for our convenience centers. So that should give us time to notice the public, let everybody know that we're going to be back in business and handle these things appropriately.
I've got a question. Lisa or Mayor can answer this for me. Does he have the funding in his budget right now to cover this $30,000?
Whether or not it's in the line, that would be the question if he's got a contracted line. But I would ask if he needs it, we would bring the amendment to the commission if it needs one.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to know, that he does have the money in his funds, it's just not in that line item. I understand.
It may be. I didn't look at it before I got here.
I don't believe I have a specified line item for this action.
For a contracted service within the convenience center. There's generally money in there that we could move, but if that is the case, that we'll have it for you at full commission.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, if you could do that. But what you're asking for from this committee is permission to go ahead and let him sign a contract up to, not to exceed $30,000.
Yeah, not to exceed 30.
Not to exceed $30,000 to do this. And one thing for the general public, being on Public Works, is several of us are, this was not just our fault because our guys got sick. Republic had some machinery breakdowns, and I think 5 out of their 7 were broke down. So the trucks were taking 3 to 4 hours. Once they got in line, they had a 3 or 4 hour
One load.
One load. So that's why this backlog, so not just, our problem, it's our partners over there's problem also. But having said that, are any other questions from the committee?
What's actually involved in the lift? It says 7770 lift charge. Is that to come to our hill yard and get it and dump it and bring it back?
So that's a good question. That is the entire thing. They're lifting it, they're coming to the hill yard, they're lifting the container, they're dumping it, and they're returning an empty container. If you note over there in the supplemental charges, there is a number there that will be crossed out prior to signing. They gave us, this was a really rapid turnaround contract, and they had pretty much a cookie cutter contract that they gave us. We do have verbal agreement that will be changed prior to signature. It's their typical fuel.
Supplemental charge you're looking at, I will mark through the 0 where it says, mark through the 250 where it says delivery, I'll put a 0 and initial it, both there and at the bottom, right past where it says on the second line, valued customer discount, I'll scratch through the 250, put a 0. And Mr. Klassen, the director, I think he's director at Republic, said just don't pay attention to that, but I want to make sure that before I sign this, that's initialed and scratched out.
So virtually 7770 a container.
That is the only thing that will be.
Still have 110 full as of today?
As of before I came to committee, we had 97, so my drivers have been making some headway.
Well, if you still had 110 full, that wouldn't be but $9,000, so I was wondering how we got to 30,000 and exceed limit.
So we'll still be generating at the same rate that we've been generating. So this is, the not to exceed is worst case scenario. I anticipate that we should come in far under that and be able to get to a regular operating scenario. This that's calculated at 12 loads per day at a 30-day maximum. That's what that number is reflecting.
Do we have any trucks running now?
Our trucks?
Correct.
Not at this hour of the day, no.
Did we have any today?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
How many did we have in operation?
I had 5 drivers out today.
Today.
Yep.
I'll make the motion to approve it, just so we can get caught up and not close our centers. That's bad.
I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Second, Commissioner Gooch. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. Your load count, do you anticipate using that $30,000 to perhaps catch up on loads in the future or over?
This is a one-time emergency contract. I don't anticipate that we'll do that. I hope that this will be, we get through it, and then we'll be to a place we're at, and then this contract will be.
One thing I'll mention is this has occurred once in the past, according to Mac Nolan, and he had to do something similar. I think he said it was almost 85 a load, or that he was.
He was saying it was $85 a load when he worked for BFI and was hauling the loads.
Oh, okay, okay.
They were charging $85 a load.
Understood that. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Commissioner Allen.
At the bottom, on the bottom left side, it says service interrupt fee, yes, late charge fee, yes. Do we know what those fees are and how and when those would be applied?
That is, again, something I believe would be stricken from that's out of the cookie cutter.
I'll strike that as well.
Another question I have is, so your calculation was the 12 loads a day for 30 days to get us to the 30,000. I guess what I'm wondering is, and it's a little bit of a different shade, I think, of what Commissioner Dodd was trying to ask, do we have to use those 30 days consecutively? Like, does this have a term? I'm wondering is this one of those things where we can have them under contract, so if we get in this situation again, we could exercise this? You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yes, I do.
Because we need a contingency plan.
My understanding with the discussions and is that this will be a one-time deal. I want to be done with this well before 30 days. What effectively 12 loads is a day is 2 drivers worth of work. So I'm adding 2 more drivers, and I'm removing the wait time that my drivers are having on the landfill by having them drop at the hill yard and having that person run up. So the calculations, I anticipate it could happen as early as 17 to 20 days. But I wanted to be sure in case we had weather events or they had equipment failure or something, that everything was covered, and we by the time the contract ended, we were in a position where we could operate normally without having to go back to this situation.
So is there any consideration to having a contingency plan?
I think that the emergency nature of this particular instance, I feel like a contingency plan or an inclusion in my normal budget might be something that's more appropriate for something like that than to take this contract as it is in the long term.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was saying, is separate from this.
Yes.
Should we have a contingency plan? Yeah.
I believe we should.
Yeah.
One other thing that came out in our Public Works meeting was that they actually open the doors at the landfill at 4 a.m. and our people start later than that. And I was going to suggest to Mr. Bishop that if you have people that are willing to work the overtime, come in early, and I know they'd kind of be working with these guys from Republic, but possibly we can whittle that down on our own too, if we have drivers that are willing to volunteer for that overtime and come in earlier where there's not traffic, because you're not going to see as much traffic then. But that's a suggestion I have. So that may save us some on this too.
That's an excellent suggestion, and I'll definitely will implement it.
Mr. Allen.
Just to follow up on that thought, that's a great idea. You're outside of peak time, you're there ahead of everybody else. And so instead of necessarily overtime, again, I'm always thinking about problem solve, how do we avoid this in the future kind of thing. So if they open at 4, should we even consider offering some of your staff a more flexible schedule where they come in at 4 and get off earlier, and that's just their schedule. Is that something that would be worthwhile? I don't know.
Actually, I do have a couple drivers that do that, that come in early like that anyway for the same reasons. We've been kind of doing that for a period of time now to try to play catch up. I also have to have drivers that work the later part of the day because we're still collecting garbage, and I have to collect that garbage from the centers as they're operating.
Any further questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we want to continue with the budget amendment now. And
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, so what you have before you is that we need to fund we're planning on moving 2 convenience centers and remodeling 2. So we've got Rockville, Smyrna, Leanna, and the landfill there at Walter Hill. And when they first started, we estimated what the price was going to be based on each one of the sites after the geotechnical, what was going to change at each one of them. We're trying to keep them all about the same. However, prices have escalated through the supply chain issue. So we actually put it out to bid. We had one bidder, Peary Construction Company here in town. The purchasing committee accepted the bid from Peary Construction Company. It came in at $5,864,867. You see it on your SharePoint broken down by location. Of course, Leanna being the most expensive. We're going to have to tear down the old fire department building that's out there that's currently, Chief Farley has a tanker out there just to keep our ISO rating. Is that correct, Chief? So that water tanker is there. We will be building a new building and using strictly a heater to keep the water from freezing. That will be a used oil heater that we'll be able to put into that building. And at the new facilities, we will be collecting used oil, so we'll be able to put the fuel into that heater from what we're actually collecting. But we did need some additional funds from what was originally requested last year. So you see the request that we're making here tonight is what we're asking to transfer. So we're asking the increase to $91,750.
No, $5,864,867.
Okay, you've heard the request. Are there any other questions? I know we've heard this at Public Works, but guys, you got any comments on this? Mr. Stevens.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the plan for the current site? Is that going to be sold?
That
For the
current site on Weekly? Yes, sir. Matter of fact, we're waiting on the Mr. Hercules to bring us I think they're almost through with it. And I talked to him last week. I think between our attorney with Nick and Mr. Hercules and their attorney, Mr. Peach, they're ready to work out that deal. The deal is that they'll take 1 acre on the back side of our 4 acres that we have there on Weekly, and in exchange for that, for the 1 acre that we'll give them for their lay-down lot behind the water department off of G Street, then they're going to give us right-of-way easement, and they will actually run the sewer line. We already have water on it, but no sewer. They'll run the sewer line to our piece of property for the remaining 3 acres that we retain, and then we'll put it on the market for sale. We think it will bring, based on what I've heard, it'll bring almost half of this, of what we're, all 4 of these. I don't know.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes, sir. Just, Bishop, do you think that in lieu of the trouble you've had keeping the convenience centers open, these improvements here aren't necessarily going to improve your efficiency. They will help your traffic flow. We do have some new compactors ordered.
They're in budget that are, they're in my budget still to be
Okay,
approved.
so long way around, I think we should anticipate some new budget and new cost to modernize the hardware at the convenience centers and perhaps staff them better so that we can avoid this problem that you've run into. Part of your problem is understaffed and under-equipped.
Yes, sir.
So I just think we need to be prepared.
That'll be in the budget. You'll be looking at new equipment, and you'll be looking at longer hours. The intent is to open at 7 and close at 6. All of these will have lights. So as it gets darker, like in October through, before the, it starts getting dark at 4:30, if you're going to stay open to 6, you want people to be able to have the well-lit lights. So that will all be in his budget that we bring to you for that request. Yes, sir.
Okay, you've heard the request. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Johnson?
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Piercy. Any further questions?
I just had a thought. Last month, we increased the engineering cost up $91,000, but that only brought the contract up to $4.8 million. And we're looking at $5.8 million now, which is another $1,064,000, I believe it is, which looks to me like it's going to cost us, because we signed a percentage of construction cost contract with the engineer. Yeah, I mean, they're doing the same thing, but we're going to have to pay them another $66,600
On top of this amount?
on top of what we approved last month. And I don't think that's been contemplated.
He's right. I mean, because the contract you signed was a percentage of construction, so.
I think that should been added to this.
We'll
now.
need to add to that.
And you said that's a total of how much, Mark? 66,000?
I just kind of rounded it up to $66,600. It looks like it comes out to $66,554.19. If I calculated that at 6.25%, that's what we calculated last month.
Commissioner Piercy, did you follow that? And if so, do you?
Yeah, it's for the engineer, because we signed a percentage of construction cost contract. They're not doing any more work, but we're going to pay them more money.
Yeah, I understand it well, and if I need to, well, I just seconded the motion. I didn't make it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Johnson
Commissioner
made the
Johnson.
motion.
Yes.
Oh,
Commissioner Johnson, will you allow us to add Mark, give us that number again.
I'm going to say $66,600 just to be round numbers.
Mind adding that to your motion?
That's fine, no problem.
Okay, and and that's also added to the second, so that takes care of the engineering costs we didn't have calculated into this $5,864,867. Okay, any other questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen? Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman P.
Yes, sir.
I've just sat up here 8 years. A lot of y'all have been here longer than I have. Have we ever had our own engineer that works for the county, or people that draw our own plans? Would it not benefit us to have that on our staff, the way we're having to create new buildings, new convenience centers? Every time we're turning around, we're having to hire an engineer or hiring an architect. Or could we not move some of that in and have our own people?
Well, it's a good question, but I don't think this is the committee to discuss it in. I think that needs to go to Public Works and to steering. But I think there's some merit in what you're saying. However, you're talking about adding a department, and then I don't know how that would work in competitive bidding in a competitive bidding process. Like I said, that's would also be a question for our attorney to answer.
If we're only having one bid on a project, I don't see much competitive there. It's just one. But anyway, I understand what you're talking about. But it looks like we spend a lot of money that we wouldn't have to if we had our own on a salary. Pay them so much a year.
But Mr. Chairman, I think it's a very valid point. But how many engineers would we end up? We need a structural engineer, environmental engineer, electrical engineer, and plumbing engineer. I mean, and
Well, scientists, it goes on.
yeah, so it becomes quite complicated, but it still needs to be discussed, because this is a lot of money that we're paying one environmental engineering firm, and
That some of us have been here a lot longer. We actually had a lawsuit with the Board of Education over that specific problem, as we felt like we were paying way too much for engineering fees and balked on it. Ended up with a lawsuit, which county pays on both ends. And of course, it was settled, but afterwards, instead of 5%, we were seeing 3% cost for our engineering on existing buildings. So I don't know. I think that this is something we need to ask our attorney and then turn it over to Steering and Public Works to let them iron it out. But, I welcome the question. Okay. Get caught up to where we're at here.
Number 10.
Okay, this is an ambulance service fund budget amendment. Seen this guy today too, so welcome, Mr. Gaither.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman, Mayor. Yeah, we're requesting to move $100,000 out of the in-fund balance into gasoline line item. We asked for this about 2 weeks ago. We may be asking this again before it's all said and done, but.
Mr. Johnson.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve the $100,000 budget amendment. Do I hear a second? Gooch seconds. Any questions? I think we can look at the pump, find the answer. Hearing no further discussion, please call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is the general fund transfer for fire rescue. Mr. Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a budget amendment to move $2,626 out of data processing services, $17,009 out of administrative equipment, and $365 out of office equipment. There was a total of $20,000 into vehicle maintenance and repairs.
This passed unanimously out of public safety.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Okay, next is the general fund transfer for the jail. Welcome.
Thank you. We have two amendments. The first one's from the jail. We're requesting to remove $200,000 from our salaries and put it in our overtime budget to cover vacancies and employees out medical leave. The second one requesting to take $9,000 out of our furniture and fixture and place it in our law enforcement equipment to help us purchase 2 new golf carts for Blackman Middle and Riverdale High School for the SROs.
Okay, you've heard the request, and this did come through public safety and was approved. Questions?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Johnson moves. Do I hear a second? Commissioner Allen seconds. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Next is a general fund budget amendment for the county mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is the meal packing event that we did weekend before last at Lane Agra. For the last 3 years, I've basically challenged, it's a team building event, and I've challenged our county employees to come out and participate, which is a real fun event to come out and pack meals. Each meal bag that we pack feeds a family of 6. All you do is drop it in hot water, boil it, and it'll feed a family of 6. This year we packed 66,528 meals for the food insecure in our county. It was distributed to many of the 501c3s, like Greenhouse Ministries, like Salvation Army, Boys and Girls Club, Journey Home, etc. They all came and picked them up, and we did it all in about really faster. We packed more meals this year in a faster time than what we have done in the past, in about 2 hours. And I have personally gone to the outside private sector and raised the money. I asked each one of the sponsors for $5,500. So this is not government money that went into doing this event. It's a fun event. Like to recognize Rogers Group, Blue Water Industries, Wright Brothers, and Smyrna Ready Mix Concrete. All 4 of those ponied up and gave $5,500 a piece. So that was $2,200. So what we're doing is a request to bring those contributions in through my budget and then pay it back out to the company, so it was no cost to us.
Okay, you've heard the request. Do I hear a motion? Commissioner Piercy moves. Commissioner Allen seconds. Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, Mayor, we're going to work you for a little bit here. I think this next one's yours also.
Yes, sir. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you all are aware, at the last full commission meeting, we had a room full of veterans, and the commission chose to set up a 30-year lease with the Veterans Group. We're going to be calling it the Veterans Community Center, which is the old maintenance building over on Rice Street by our library and archives. So we had some additional funding left and in our Gov 20 grant. We can go in and help those guys out because they don't have any money. So by putting in, I got Adam to look at, we were first looking at $25,000, and that was the request, but I think he has gotten a price down to about 17.6, a little bit less than 18,000 to put in new ceiling tiles, new carpet in the front because we're going to be moving our Veterans County Coordinator, Dominic. We'll be moving him out of the Goldstein's building over there, giving him 4 offices to where the veterans come in with their families, their kids, grandkids, et cetera, and he'll work with them, getting them into the VA. And then they'll have the rest of the building back there, but this will pay for the new ceiling tiles in the building, carpet in Dominic's 4 offices, laminate in the rest of the building, and 15 gallons of paint. And they're going to have a paint day, and all the veterans are going to come over and paint on the inside of it. So that's what we're asking It passed out of property management the other night, and that was up to 25,000, but since that time, I think we'll come in less than 18,000.
So the amount you are requesting tonight is 25, but you...
25, yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions? Johnson?
The mayor noted that it did come out of property management unanimous, so move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further questions?
I'll just clarify, this is Gov 21 money, right? Not Gov 20 money, right?
Gov 21.
Okay.
Okay, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, item 16, additional state grant fund for drug veterans and mental health courts.
This is a request on behalf of Trish and the Recovery Court. She was contacted this week by the state to say they had additional monies if she would just provide their wish list. She did and received a confirmation that she would get it. The funds have to be spent by June 30th. So this request, there's 3 budget amendments for the 3 parts that she's asking for. The first is $29,000 for the drug court, $29,000 for mental health court, and $7,000 for veterans treatment courts. And these will be used for travel, conferences, drug screens, and then direct assistance for the participants, including medication, medical co-pays, document recovery, and housing assistance and clothing.
Are there any matches on this?
No, no, sir.
This is actually in addition to grants that we had already received.
Right. We'll be getting amendments to the contract, but last year this happened about the same time, and we didn't get the contract until June to be approved. So we are doing things a little out of order as we did last year, but trying to get the monies budgeted so that she can have it spent by June 30th.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept this grant.
I'd like to make the motion include the authorization to apply for the grant or for the amendment, and for the mayor to be able to sign those amendments once they come in, since these are 100% funded and no match.
So moved.
Okay. Commissioner Dodd makes a motion.
Second.
Second. Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy? Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, item 17, general fund budget transfer for the election commission. I don't see that, Mr. Farley, here. Are you going to take care of it?
I'll do that one too. This is a request to move $6,000 from in-service training into printing stationery and forms. He is requesting this amendment to provide funds to fold and seal 200,000 voter cards because of the redistricting, and also because their office folder machine broke.
Okay, you've heard the request. Does anyone have a
Motion
question?
to approve.
Commissioner Stevens, and a second, Commissioner Piercy. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Motion carries. All right. Doug, I know you've been anticipating coming up for a while. So this is the Education Capital Projects Fund Budget Amendment and Project Amendment. Welcome.
The first amendment request in the capital project fund is it's a capital project fund budget amendment for Smyrna High School football turf project. So Smyrna High School is asking for permission from the Rutherford County School Board to install artificial turf on the Smyrna High School football field. The project will be 100% funded by donations and will be budgeted and accounted for in the County Education Capital Projects Fund, as Smyrna High School does not have a legally separate football booster club. Total project cost estimate is $900,000. Let's see here. It says contingent of school board approval, the turf purchase will be made through the RCS purchasing department. Upon completion of the projects, RCS engineering will expect the construction and ensure that it complies with bid specifications. It is stressed that the turf project becomes a donated asset to Rutherford County Schools, and that at the time of the donation, there will be no liens on the donated property. Construction is verified by the Rutherford County School Board attorney. The recommended motion is to accept the generous donation from Smyrna Ready Mix to approve the artificial turf project as presented for the project at Smyrna High School, as well to approve the budget amendment to Fund 177 to budget for this capital project. Want to add that on your detailed budget amendment, it has $1 million. I did not know the exact number for this until we opened bids as of this afternoon for this. So if you would, in your motion, would be to be for $900,000, not $1 million in the budget amendment, the detailed budget amendment. To that will suffice for what was underneath the bid when it was open today. West.
Go ahead and take the project amendment too, if you want to add that to it.
I don't hear any objection. Let's let him do that if that's okay.
Okay. The second one is, whereas the first amendment, of course, it's moving up to the full commission with the $900,000 donation that was generously given by Smyrna Ready Mix. This other one is a project amendment. It'll stay in the same line. It's project amendment request, emergency Smyrna PD, and that's Professional Development Center roof repairs. During recent storms, portions of the roof on the Smyrna Professional Development Center were lifted and sat back down. Temporary repairs have been made to protect the building. A roof replacement is required at this time. We're requesting to utilize existing funds in Fund 177 left from the Thurman Francis roof project. With the recommended motion to approve the request to utilize $57,541.26 from Fund 177 to replace the damaged roof at the Smyrna PD Center as presented.
You've heard the request. Do I hear?
Mr. Chairman, both of these are time sensitive, and so they didn't have the opportunity to go before Health and Ed. I did send these to the Health and Ed committee and asked anyone to contact me if they wanted to speak. I'd make sure that we suspended the rules and invited them to come. Having not heard from anyone, I'm going to assume everybody's okay with it. So I'll adjust the motion on number 1 to cover the $900,000 to cover the turf project, and then fund number 177, the number 2 as presented. Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the request. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Stevens seconds. Any other questions for Mr. Beaudry? Hearing none, call roll, please, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Motion carries.
On the building program at Health and Ed, the board had brought up, some items for the building program, and of course, on Health and Ed, they approved with, to start with design on some of the buildings that were chosen by the school board, for building. Of course, they also requested the BOE to go back and prioritize those building projects. That's what they're doing tonight. I'm just making you aware of that, so I will bring an amendment next month for the designs of those buildings after Health and Ed gets done reviewing it.
Thank you, Doug.
All right.
Okay. Now, we're going to look at item 19, discussion of the American Rescue Plan Act revenue loss. Lisa?
Okay, so talking about the American Rescue Plan, and part of the funds can be used for revenue loss. Now, in the beginning, in the interim rule, there were requirements when you calculated interim loss that you had to use calendar year. calculations. I'm not going to go into the detail. It was just, it didn't do well for us because of a huge payment. If you remember me talking about the property tax coming in and don't compare it to the year because it was, okay, same kind of similar situation occurred for us looking at revenue on a calendar year basis, primarily because of a huge mortgage payment. Final rule came out and said you could use fiscal year, which made it a lot easier. Now, County Technical Advisory Service, CTAS, set up, thankfully, counties all had the same chart of accounts. You hear so long the time they said we just can't make chart of accounts, we have to use the same. It made it very easy then for CTAS to develop something, and then they got the information from our auditors to help calculate revenue loss. If you go to the second page of this, the first year of calculation provided $5.9 million in revenue loss. And this is all just looking at all revenues. You can see all the funds that were looked at. In 2021 fiscal year, he's got calendar year, but fiscal year, it was a $17,885,000 loss. So that's where you start, is that do you have documentation that you did experience a loss? And so we do. Final rule came out and said, we're going to give you a standard deduction of $10 million. So you can use $10 million of your American Rescue money as revenue loss. Well, you can see for us, we got more. Now, what is that? What does all that mean? Is that you could use part of that money for general government expenses, that you can demonstrate that you lost money. Now, if you go back to that first page, the period of performance for the expenses begin March 3rd, 2021. All expenses have to be obligated by December 31st of 2024 and spent by December 31st, 2026. This is a mechanism that I am recommending that we take our revenue loss, and I've provided expenses for the period of payroll expenses from March 19th to June 30th in the general fund totaled $21,059,000. Our non-federal, non-payroll expenditures totaled $5,842,000. That's just going from April to June. I'm just saying we can demonstrate that we had more than enough expenses to cover this revenue loss that we have, that's occurred. So my recommendation, it's that we use the revenue loss and move the money, not that I'm doing it now because we've already allocated, I'm more talking about the second tranche of money that is supposed to come in June, and move that out and put it into the general fund as revenue loss. I'm not saying that, oh my goodness, we can't spend it. I'm trying to get you in a situation where you can spend it whatever you deem necessary. It takes other restrictions that the American Rescue funds have on it. The only thing, this is the third bullet point in there. It's, let's see, is that the third? Oh, 3 things that we cannot do with this money. You cannot, we wouldn't do it anyway. Offset a reduction in net tax revenue. We're not doing that. We're not depositing to the pension fund and not using it for debt service or replenishing reserves or putting it in settlements or judgments. Other expenses. The reason I bring it up is in April, we have to report quarterly to Treasury what we're using the funds for. So I put that off in our last quarter to say, that was when they were having us at calendar year. is to bring it to fiscal year and say, this, at the time, last quarter, I said, the commission hadn't decided what they were going to do yet. And so this time I would like to report that we intend to use the amount that we've calculated for revenue loss and use it to pay for general government expenses. I'm using a prior period. All I'm going to do is, by June 30th, is move that money over to the general fund, and with your approval, commit it for something in the future. To commit those funds for that, I would have to have a vote by the full commission. Now, that's I guess what I'm asking for tonight is to use the calculated revenue loss for the next tranche of American Rescue Funds and move that, recognize it as paying us back for the general fund expenses that we incurred from March 3rd to June 30th, 2021. Does that make sense?
Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much do we have left that we haven't allocated out of that second tranche?
Out of the first tranche, we've allocated everything. Part of it went to premium pay. The rest of it right now is allocated to the 4 projects. They're not, all 4 projects are not fully funded, but that's what we've tried to cover the construction and a lot of the buildings. We've only started 2, but that's, to answer your question, we've allocated all 32 million, the first tranche. So this is really saying the second tranche that's due in June of 2022.
But when you think, Lisa, taking to finish the other total of 6, we're getting 32, right? And so to finish the other 6, depending on cost.
Depending on those, I think it was, I mean, we had the permit costs, we've got some other legal, we've got some other things. I think it was about $1 million that we'll need of the next tranche.
Of the next tranche, and then if we build the other 2 facilities, like on the property we got donated today, the 2 acres out at the Del Webb, do all 6, and we'll still have lots of money from that second tranche.
So that's,
but
that's really what that's really what I was attaching is that is the second tranche moved in the general fund. It becomes general fund dollars, and then you're not tied to the 2024 date.
Correct. Cut off.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know.
I think it's a good move, Mr. Chairman.
I've talked to Lisa about this too, and I know y'all are going to have more questions. First thing I want to say is, you know, they actually offered us, what, $10 million? $10
million standard deduction.
And, of course, she's, being a numbers person, figured out that we've actually got at least $23 million, actually more than that, available to us. And I think she's given us some good options on how we could spend this or not spend it. We can put this in the general fund, and basically there's add to our rainy day fund. And we'll discuss that.
I would commit it. I would kind of keep it separate. When I talk about the different funds, the difference between restricted and well, restricted means that you've got something above us, some law
Lisa,
or regulation.
If they will go to item number 21,
those
definitions are right there on the first page.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to that. But anyway,
I mean, they can look at that while you're discussing that, because that's on our fund balance policy. So it just so happens to be there while we're discussing that same thing.
Still, and it's on the first page too, of the difference between restricted, committed, and assigned and unassigned. Only the general fund and the general purpose school funds have unassigned fund balances. The rest of the funds are assigned to them. The difference, a restricted fund balance has external forces that say you can only spend it for certain stuff. Think of grants, or it's, to me, is a good item of what is restricted. Committed is only for specific purposes determined by formal action of the county commission. since y'all are the highest level of decision-making authority. It doesn't mean that it's in stone, because y'all can decide to change it. But when the vote is taken that we want it committed, it tells us in accounting which bucket to put it in.
So actually, you need a recommendation or a motion to use the funds from the American Rescue Funds for this revenue loss that you pointed. That's the
Yes.
motion you need.
Yes, and that we will commit those for a capital project. I'm guessing, I'm just throwing something out there for capital project, because if it was coming in, we would be spending it probably on these buildings.
That's correct.
So,
But we actually have other grant monies that are supposed to be on another 32, isn't it, by June?
that's what
But-
that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
And I would like to tell them
Right,
that.
right. So we want to go ahead and ask for a motion. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you. I've had another question about this. So for general government services, could that be our payroll and?
To me, it's the cleanest thing is the general fund. I could have added expenses for the ambulance. I could have added expenses for the solid waste. It's all of those.
So why would we
General.
commit it for a capital project if we can use it for general services?
I just thought you don't have to. But I was suggesting that it's just separated from our unassigned fund balance. You could not, and it just rolls into your fund balance, unassigned fund balance.
But we have to have it committed according to the grant.
No. No, that part is a suggestion. One is that you do say that you would like to use these portion of the next tranche to use toward the identified revenue loss that we had in the last quarter of 2020, second quarter of 2021. Then, if you told me nothing else but that, I would just roll it in, and it will just increase our unassigned fund balance.
Well, that seems to be the way to do it. I'm trying to understand why we would commit it to a certain project when we can use it to shore up our unassigned fund balance.
You can do that. Or if you want to say, that this is the part that I would need to know by June 30th where to put that money. If you say, okay, we now know whatever we now know at the end of the year, we want to use part of that and commit it for X. That tells Mark and I how to account for that money. I don't need that decision now. I just need a decision that we're going to use the monies from the second tranche towards revenue loss.
Commissioner Allen.
So would you not look at where we lost the revenue and figure out what those things funded? That's not how you want to do it?
I don't have to do that.
And then
If it goes to the general fund, revenue loss was all the funds. You can, when you put it into the general fund, you can divvy it out from there.
I guess part of what I was thinking is that when we experienced revenue loss, we had projected revenue in certain funds, and we had obligations we needed to meet. So it felt like this is money that's sort of designed to backfill that shortage. And so that's why I was asking, would you not look at where you fell short, like, hotel motel tax or,
It is every revenue except federal revenue. So it's every revenue, every fund. So I say take it to the general fund because you can easily transfer out of the general fund to other funds. You can't go, once you put it into a fund and allocate to a fund, you can't go solid waste to general fund, but you can't go general fund to solid waste.
Okay, it gives you most latitude, understand?
Yes.
Okay. And then to follow up on Commissioner Stevens' question, at the very bottom of the page, of that first page where you do the calculation for us, in that last box it says, all funds are to be obligated by December 31, 2024, and spent by 31, 2026.
Yes.
So they do have to be obligated by then.
They have to be obligated, yes. In 2 years, you have to have obligated what you're going to do and how you spend it. But once you move this and use it for that, you don't have a time frame
If it goes into general fund, that goes away? Okay.
for
That
that piece.
requirement does.
yeah,
That's what,
That's what I was trying to follow. Okay.
Yes.
exactly.
Thanks.
Yes. Okay.
So, questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to move these funds.
Use, to use revenue loss, use the second tranche of funds toward revenue loss.
Is there a specific dollar amount?
Yes.
Like, well, so it's the 17,885 plus the 5.9 million?
Yes, yes. And
Totals on the first page, the 23,794,23.
23,790,423.
Well, I guess I'll make a motion then that we allocate $23,790,423 from the second tranche of the American Rescue Funds to revenue loss, and that we place that in our general fund.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any other questions or discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Now, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, that was if all things worked wonderfully. Now, what came today, speaking of the second tranche, Tennessee Municipal League, this is where this came from, and this was a notice that some ARPA funds are likely to be rescinded. This morning, TML confirmed that a portion of the American Rescue Plan Act state and local federal recovery fund dollars are likely to be rescinded by Congress and used for other purposes. As a result of federal budget negotiations taking place between congressional leaders and the White House, that the SLFRF funds will be used to offset supplemental funding the White House has requested for the next phase of COVID response efforts and to help fund humanitarian aid to the people of Ukraine. In a letter sent last week, 35 GOP senators, led by Mitt Romney, wrote to the White House asking for more oversight and clarity into the previously authorized pandemic aid. As part of the agreement, Congress is structuring the recensions so that they are first made from the states, then territories, tribal governments, and then local and county governments. And then this is a plea to urge you to contact your member of Congress and our U.S. senators and implore them to minimize the recensions to local governments. Local budgets are being set with the expectation that these dollars will be available for recovery, and any move to rescind local dollars threatens our community. So that's out there. Mayor's going to take care of that, though.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll start making phone calls tomorrow. I hope you all do too.
Yeah, I think that would be a wise choice for all of us to contact our representatives. But one thing I want to mention is this money that we just allocated will actually kind of be a buffer in case we do have funds cut. We still got this money available to cover, where we planned on spending. Commissioner Stevens.
So this rescission would only come from the second tranche?
Right. Right.
So that's really good that we didn't spend all of it.
And that's what they said, is don't count your chickens before they hatch, don't commit that second tranche.
Okay. We are ready to discuss, unless you have more questions on this topic, amendment to the sub-receipts contract for emergency rental assistance. That's also Lisa.
Yes. So this is emergency rental assistance. We've got two community partners that would like to be able to do a little bit more for the citizens that they are helping, and that are those people that they find themselves Okay, so part of the money can be used for stability services to keep people stably housed. And sometimes there are situations where people have to go from their home into a hotel before they can get housing. And this request, and working with our third-party Horn and these contracts with information sharing and release of information, and that they follow all the same guidelines that we have to follow for whether somebody is eligible to receive the funds. This amendment allows them to help those people and help us create a mechanism to be able to pay, and it's for Journey Homes and Doors of Hope that we're requesting amendments to their contracts to assist us with this portion. And you've got those contracts listed, but that, in a summary, is what we are asking, is amendment to the contracts to these two community partners. Kind of fleshes out a little bit more of the stability services that we can offer.
So this is no money coming out of our pocket. This is just
It's
that grant
still- it's
money and allowing
using-
them to work with us to distribute it.
Yes, it's a different piece of the puzzle of housing people and getting people stably housed. There's this little part in between that we are trying to fix for some people.
Okay, any questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Johnson, thank you. Do I hear a second? Boots, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. Now, item 21, discuss our fund balance policy. Let Lisa.
Y'all are getting the benefit of last Thursday and Friday of Mark and I attending additional training that we had. And this was some information that was coming from the comptroller's office as they review our budgets. And one of the things that they said that they are going to begin doing next year is looking at our fund balances and our policies to make sure that we our policies have us having at least 2 months in our reserves. Now, 2 months is 16.6666. Our current fund balance, our general fund balance, is set at 15%. So I'm not asking for a motion or anything tonight. We'll need it by the end of the fiscal year to at least raise it up to what the comptroller is going to be requesting. But I have to remind y'all, we are AAA. So that this kind of comes into play. And just to give you, there's only 3 counties in the state that have reached AAA. Just saying. But when you look at, when we closed our books last year, our unassigned fund balance in the general fund was 31.5%. Now that is our expenditures compared to unassigned fund balance, not total fund balance, just the unassigned portion. So our neighbor, Williamson County, when they closed, their fund balance was at 48.4%. Hamilton County, I thought, we're going to beat them. No, Hamilton County's unassigned fund balance is closed at 53.8%. So we're barely there compared to our other 2 AAA. So I tell you that we'll need some, for sure, decisions to raise it at least a minimum up to, let's round it to 17. And where that comes into play is when we start pulling things together and I present, here are our estimated revenues, this is our expenditures, this is what we think our fund balance will be, our estimated fund balance at the beginning, and I calculate and I say, are we hitting that 15%? And I'm going to say, are we going to be hitting 18? Are we going to be hitting 20? You know, that's the time that I want y'all to be thinking about it, so that by June 30th or June 26th, that would be the latest that we need to set our adjustment to fund balance policy.
That was mostly for information, and the reason I don't want to vote on this tonight is if we do have a tight budget, you know, hopefully we won't have to have a tax increase. I'll say that dirty word, but if we raised our limit to 20, let's just say, from our 15% current, which, by the way, in case you didn't catch that, we're not going to have a choice. We're going to have to raise it at least 16.6. So rounded it to 17. So we're talking about 2 more percentage points to go to 20. I'm not completely sold on that yet, but I am sold on the fact that I'd rather have, if I'm looking at a close tax year, then I'd rather be looking at a 15% what we have to hold versus 20%. That may make a penny or two difference. So, but anyway, that's something for us to think about. Anything else on that, Lisa?
No, sir.
All right, let's go to item 22, general fund budget transfer for general sessions. And I think, Lisa, you're going to carry this for us?
Yes, sir. As we were reviewing some of our accounts today, we did notice that and knew that this was coming. But in general sessions, they're part-time. They had a person who was out on FMLA. It's extended longer than we budgeted for. And so all that has cleared out, and we need to move $11,950 from wages and move it into the part-time. It is money within their budget, but it will take care of this. Can't have a negative or an overspent payroll item.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay. Now, we want to discuss our finance director position that we had posted. Sonia, if you would, I'm going to have you come up and at least sit at the corner table here, because we're bound to have some questions for you in a moment. One thing I want to mention, I've had discussions with our finance director, and as she said, Mark, and she had been in training this week. Some of the things that you're finding out is, you know, part of the reasons we may have problems with candidates is the amount of money or compensation that we're offering. So that may be something we need to consider. 2, timing. As of right now, most of the counties and people that would be doing the type jobs that we need are actually in the middle of their budgets. I don't know that I would want to hire somebody that would walk off and leave a budget in the middle of it, because they might turn around and walk off and leave us in the middle of something like that. But anyway, one of the suggestions I had, and this is completely up to you guys. It's not me to decide anything. It's a 7. I would suggest that we wait till after the primary election this spring. What is it, May something?
May 3rd.
May 3rd. To actually look at opening then. And the reason I say that, I mean, if you look at it, there may be some people that would apply or not apply, not knowing who they're going to work for. And facts of life. But anyway, that's a suggestion that I have. Too, I think that we're going to need to up the price there. I don't know, Lisa, do you want to speak on this first, on some of the things
Yes.
you've heard? So.
Yes, sir, and it's, again, you get the benefit of the training we had last week, and, you know, it was Tennessee Government Finance Officers Association, so it's a bunch of us fun and wild people that like governmental accounting. That's all together, and I've been with this organization for many years, and so I had several people come up to talk to me and say, you know, I heard, have they found anybody? And I said, no, and then they would follow up, you're not paying enough. You're not paying enough. That's why you're not getting anybody. And then when you think about it, so yes, you know, you had a candidate that in the thing that had a minimum amount that they were requesting, and I would throw that out at 150. You know, I think about when I came in, and the person that comes in, you're going to expect them to do the same level of work that I do. You know, you can give them some grace if they hadn't been here, but pretty quick that's going to be your expectations, and I think that, you know, 150, you should be able to get somebody out of the woodwork who might be saying, you know, should I not? The other thing, again, if you think outside of just Rutherford County, if there is another finance director in the other counties that want to come here, part of that decision is, can I afford to move to Rutherford County? So that's, you know, in one sense I pull it out of the ceiling, the other is not. I think 150 is very fair. I may be wrong, but
Mayor?
I'm thinking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with our finance director opinion. The finance director I think that we can all concur that we're the 4th largest county, Hamilton County, based on the census, but I thought we got short-sheeted anyway, or short-counted, if you will. But I still think that this is the 4th largest county. And the CFO of any large corporation, as large as what we are, look at what our total budget is warrants paying. We've had one. When does it close? Tonight? Our posting closes tonight at 12 o'clock. We've had one person from Texas, and she has a GED. You know, it's kind of insulting that we only want to pay 120. I concur, Mr. Chairman. For this position that reports to this committee, not to me, reports to this committee, you need to start it at a minimum, just post it, and then open it up after the elections if that's what you choose to do. I would go in at 150, easy. This is a big job.
It's a big job.
It's a big job.
Ms. Stevenson?
So I will echo some of the points that they've made. Historically, when we have addressed the pay structure and the pay table and those type things, not that we've focused all of our efforts, but we've focused many of our efforts on making sure that we bring the people, some people call them boots on the ground, to make sure that we elevate those pays and get them in a higher level. And that is true. That is needed just like everything else. But whenever you lose somebody in this level of position, then you find it hard then to replace that person for the same pay that we've been giving. And so one of the things that I would say is they're absolutely right. If we looked at the private sector for what this position would pay, it would be double what probably, or close to double to what we're offering now for a CFO, and that's basically what Lisa is a CFO with the county chief financial officer. So I think at 150 we would have a better opportunity and maybe additional applicants that might not have applied before. The other thing that you bring up, another point, is individuals who live outside the county are looking to say, can I afford to live in Rutherford County? And that may be something that some individuals may have hesitated in applying because they didn't want to relocate. And our current policy says, you know, we have a residency policy for our department heads, and I don't know if that's something we have to look at, because many people know that that is a requirement that we have, that our department heads relocate to Rutherford County. So that may be something that we need to address as well. I'm not saying we have to. Obviously, we would want somebody to be a Rutherford Countian that lived here that would have first precedence over somebody else. But I do think we have to be mindful, based upon your comment, that was one of the things that I thought about as well, is maybe some people were hesitant in applying because of the relocation. I also, this past week, and I know many of you have probably seen it, you know, the city of Murfreesboro not too long ago announced that they were doing a 7% increase effective immediately, and that it would not have an impact on their fiscal budget in July, you know, any changes they made. Now, Town of Smyrna has done something similar at 8%, so it got me thinking, what are some of our other entities that we are being compared to in our salary survey that we've got out there? What are they doing? So I took the list of what the other entities were doing, and Sarah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of the 20, so 50% of them are implementing some type of an increase outside of their budget. So what they're telling us, and what Lisa is saying, is, you know, what we were offering was just not enough with what the other entities are offering right now. So we're going to have to make some kind of change in order to make sure that we get a good candidate to run a county the size of Rutherford County. You want somebody with skill sets that, you know, can handle the operations, is my thoughts. If we, I do have a question. You said not reopening the posting from now until May 3rd, but opening the posting on May 3rd. Is that what I understood you to say? If y'all decided to.
That's up to us to decide. And you know, I'm open to, you know, suggestions from this committee. You know, what do y'all think's best, or which direction would you want to go? Are y'all all right with waiting till the primary is over before we open? Are you okay with starting offer of 150? Like I said, it's not for me to decide, it's for us to decide. I want your input too, Mr.
Sonia, do you happen to know how much the finance director of Hamilton County or Williamson County, what they're making?
I don't have Williamson Counties. I can't think of it right off the top of my head, but I do believe in Hamilton County it was more, their entry level was more than I think potentially more than maybe the 150. I'd have to go back and look because it's been a minute since I reviewed that. I mean, I obviously would be happy to send that out to everybody, the entities that we're comparing to. Their data is going to be outdated, obviously, because it's been, you know, a year or two since they updated it. But I could absolutely bring that back to you.
What about if we're looking at someone to relocate, have a budget to assist them in their relocation?
And that's perfectly, you know, a lot of people do that, a lot of companies do. Well, Lisa, you have a comment on as far as amount?
No, it was more or less just on the comparison. You know that we are centralized accounting and centralized purchasing. Williamson County, they're not. So the school board is totally separate. They're fine. Comparing to Williamson County is not an apple to apple.
Of the entities what other counties are like us, or cities like us that do that? Do you know right off the top of your head?
One comes to mind, but then you have to think of size. Bedford County has moved to the 81 Act, as has Madison County, Jackson. I know that those are centralized.
Well, one of the things that we can do whenever we find just like we do with the larger counties, and when we compare to us and the small, you know, we would do the smaller the same wise. We would take, you know, 5 or 10 positions within that county and say, how is that in comparison to us? And if they're paying 10% less, then we would say, okay, then, you know, this salary needs to be 10% more in order to be comparable to what we're paying. So I could look at that as well.
I would just look at the type of office, too.
I'm looking at the calendar. May 3rd is primary date. So we would, if we stuck with that date, I'd say we'd meet, that Thursday? Well, we have a regular meeting that Thursday, the 5th. So we discuss that at that time.
only other thing, the other thing that I guess is important to me is that, and maybe after the primary, that's one thing, is that the 21, because I work for the 21, is that y'all are the one who's been here and y'all are seasoned. I would like for this body, I know Robert's not going to be here, is to have this vote. I would love for y'all to be sure that y'all have this decided before y'all go on to other items.
We're committed to be here till August anyway, I think, or September. Let's see, Commissioner Stevens first and then Sonia.
So I'm not necessarily opposed to waiting to post it again, but how long are you willing to stay, Ms. Nolan? Are you willing to ride it out through the end of the budget year, or?
Look, I already had that in my mind. I mean, I was already mentally here. As we talked, I was already mentally here, to June, and then after that to work. I don't have I have got another job to go to.
So if we post this thing on May 4th, how long does it post? Is it like 3 weeks or? So we're into June.
You could do it before and close it that Friday.
Well, and one of the things I was going to mention, my hope is that our survey is going to be by the 1st of April. So one of the things that we might also consider is that you have an April budget meeting. At that point in time, we would have what the recommendation would be from that person, and hopefully, I can't imagine that it's going to be less than 150. So what my thought is that you would have something else to look at, and in the meantime, I could bring out additional information to you at the April meeting. Then you could make your decision when you wanted to post it, and you can post it from 1 week to 3 weeks to a month. I mean, it's really up to this body how long they want to post it, and if we wanted to post it, in advance, like if we got the survey information back in April and they could come to the budget meeting then and explain it to you, then we could post it right after that. You might have a salary that you could say, okay, range or whatever. So that's something else to consider.
Been able to pull up Hamilton counties, and they're paying their finance director, I think it's $153,000. So that kind of give you a similar size, $153,000. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personally, I wouldn't like to wait to post it until after that election. I think we'd be better off posting it before then and maybe make it close a week or two after that so we have more time. If we post it after the election and keep it open for a few weeks, now we're into June, and we don't even meet in July, and then I don't know how long she's planning to stay after we hire somebody, but I'd really like for the person to have some overlap, so there's some training period instead of just 3 days and then, they're on their own, so.
Well, I'm willing to cross over.
Mr. Goode.
So the comment was made by maybe Lisa or maybe yourself that someone would be hesitant to apply because we're right in the middle of a budget season. Would it be fair to say to put in the job posting that this position could start based on whatever, July the 1st or the 15th, so that if you've got people that's in the middle of the budget process, that they could still feel comfortable?
Here's the thing. Counties are to the very end, but okay. Counties are at the very end, but cities, they get theirs done way faster than we do. So a lot of them are done in May or June. So it could be a current finance director of a city that might be interested in coming to the county. That they're not tied to, they could come earlier.
But I guess those people who are tied to it.
Yeah.
I don't want to drag it out forever, but yeah, could that be put in the negotiable start date?
I think that would be, I mean, I would expect that it would be as, even if you had it open and you closed a week after the primary, somebody coming in would be, they got to give a notice if they're currently working. So, I mean, I think all of that is negotiable of when they could start.
And just one more question. When you were getting feedback that we're just not paying enough, was there any feedback that people may have looked at the number of staff members that you had and said, this is just not enough?
They didn't
Everybody?
No, because they're all finance directors. They know what the job is. They didn't ask about staff.
Sonia.
Now, I was like, I forgot what I was going to say. I would think that most people in this position, you know, we said we would give them, negotiate the start date. Most people would anticipate probably more than 2 weeks. Most people would probably want to give a 3 weeks to a month notice. If not, I would anticipate that somebody at this level, they would want to, I mean, it's a lot to close out as a director to close out for somebody to come into your place and those type things. So I don't think that would be an issue.
I concur. I think that, you know, if we find a candidate that we like, that we should be able to work with them and, you know, especially if they have to relocate, that kind of thing. So those are issues I think that are something we can work out. So do we have a decision on what we want to do? One, I think, I think I see an agreement that we take action after May 3rd, after the primary. Does anyone want to make a suggestion on when we post this and when we bring it down? And I think there was a good point made that, you know, we need to wait at least a few days after the 3rd, say maybe even the 5th. That's when we meet. But is that enough time, or we want to wait another week? And I'd like y'all's opinion.
Why the primary?
As I said before, I think that it might make a difference to some people. You know, of course, the primary is not the final, you know, August is the actual final date.
Yeah.
You know, when that'll be made. But I think, you know, after the primaries, a lot of the questions about who will be running will be answered. And there's some people that may or may not want to work for one of the candidates that are out there. So that's why, that was my suggestion.
The reason I asked, there's a lot of opponents in the general that's not going to be on the primary too.
And I understand that. I understand that.
Final decision won't come till the fall.
Like I said, that's my suggestion, but, you know, yeah, we all decide, not just me.
How many people here have competition?
Let's see. Do all of us have competition here? I think we do. Yeah. Well, Trey doesn't have. He doesn't have a opponent. I don't think Chanto does. That's the only two that I'm aware of. So.
McAdoo doesn't.
McAdoo.
But the
That's kind of.
finance director answers to this committee. Finance director answers to this.
Yeah, I report to this committee, but I work for all 21.
That's
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think that only local applicants would know the personalities, and probably many applicants local may not even know some of the personalities. But I think that we had mentioned or briefly discussed at our last meeting hiring a headhunter.
I'm sorry?
Hiring a headhunter. So has anyone given any more thought to that?
I haven't myself, but I mean that is an option.
And I think Lisa, you said something, Sonia, about 20 to 30,000. You said? No.
One of them said a minimum of 40,000, and the other one was like, oh, wait, I'm thinking about the salary survey.
The city.
I recollect 30, 20.
Yeah, I think that was right. I think it was around the 30,000 range to do that. But I mean, if you took the extra monies that you would have spent on that to increase your, of course, your salary would be an ongoing increase. It's totally, after the last meeting, I reached out to them and told them that, you know, it was still in the discussion phase, and they said that if we wanted them, that they were there for us, so.
Stevens.
So it looks like our next budget meeting is April 7th. So hopefully by then we'll have the survey back, right? Hopefully, more information about the pay. So if we posted it like the following Monday, that's the 11th, and kept it open for 4 weeks, that would put us till May 9th. So that gives people 28 days to apply. They'll know who the winner of the primary is. We'll hopefully have our salary information by then. And we have all these budget meetings that we have in May already scheduled, so hopefully we could piggyback some of the interviews on that, so we don't have to have a lot of special called sessions. So that would be my suggestion.
It sounds good to me, Commissioner. I'll kind of echo what Lisa said. You know, we're the ones that have been doing this job for the last several years, and you know what it takes to do it, and I'd rather us make that decision. I agree with Commissioner Stevens' suggestion there. Do we need a motion on that, or?
I think.
Why don't we go ahead and make a motion?
Well, we can, or do we just want to wait until next month and make the motion officially then, after we have more information? Do we want a motion to defer the whole topic to next month and make that motion then?
Completely up to y'all. I'm not twisting arms to push this one way or the other.
I do think we need a plan. So if we don't like this plan at next month's meeting, we could always change it.
Yeah.
But I like having deadlines and goals and some kind of plan in place when I'm working on things, so instead of just leaving it open-ended for a whole other month, so.
Okay.
Well, I'll make the motion that we decide the salary to post at our next budget meeting, and that we plan on posting the job listing on April 11th and keep it open through May 9th.
Okay. Does everybody understand that? Do I have a second to that motion? And I have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by...
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. In the job posting, do we need any kind of a motion or instruction that the start date is negotiable and that there could be a assistance with relocation?
I'm seeing, Sonia, you want to answer that for us?
So it's not necessary for us to negotiate the start date. I mean, you would do that during the interview process anyways. That would be something they would bring up, you know, and most people would say out of courtesy for my current employer, or I don't have a job and I'm looking, or whatever it is. As far as the relocation, I think that that's something we just wait and see who the applicants are. Some people will, most people, if they live too far away, is going to want to relocate anyways. I mean, I don't know that that's something you have to do right this, you know, with the posting, but obviously we can if you want to, if you think that that will bring in some other applicants, you know, that might not otherwise apply if they were living in, the, you know, Chattanooga or...
Well, I think on some of the comments that you made and Lisa made, that people may not apply because could they afford to live here or could they afford to move in? And I think if it's on the job posting, some way that there could be some assistance in relocation.
So we
I don't know how you would word it, but...
Yeah, I don't either. We'd have to come up with some amount, because depending on where somebody's coming from, you know, I mean, just moving from one side of Murfreesboro to the other side, a moving truck. But no, yeah. I'm just saying the cost of that. The cost of doing that sometimes could be, you know, $1,000 or $2,000. So depending on where they're moving from, you just have to come up with an up to amount or a percentage amount or something like that.
Just a negotiable amount.
Or could you just put in their relocation expenses may be provided?
Right. Relocation assistance may be provided based upon distance of move or something like that. Yeah, we could say something like that if that's what y'all want to do.
Okay.
Really?
Since we're going to be discussing salary at the next budget meeting, could you bring a copy of the posting and let us actually go through it at that meeting? That way we can give direct feedback on exactly what's going to be out there?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll go ahead and give it to them. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do I have any more discussion? Motion is to, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but to look at this at our next meeting to decide the compensation, and then to post on the 11th, was that correct? And then keep it up for 4 weeks, and then at that time, that'll land somewhere around the 9th of May, somewhere in that area. So does anybody have any further questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Mayor or Lisa, do y'all have anything else? Okay, we are adjourned.